In other developments, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer says the UK will not take part in the war on Iran. It comes as the Daily Telegraph newspaper reports that Donald Trump told it he's considering pulling the US out of NATO. In an address to the nation, Starmer said the UK is pushing for diplomacy to end the conflict in the Middle East.
This is not our war. We will not be drawn into the conflict. That is not in our national interest. And the most effective way we can support the cost of living in Britain is to push for de-escalation in the Middle East and a reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, which is such a vital route for energy. To that end, we're exploring each and every diplomatic avenue that is available to us.
Let's bring in Rory Challands in London for us. Rory, so the Prime Minister talking about the impact of the war on with Iran there. Any change at all in the messaging?
Not really. This was a message from Keir Starmer that mixed both the international and the domestic. He reiterated, as we just heard him there in that clip that you played, a message that we have heard several times from Keir Starmer, and I counted at least 3 times in his press conference earlier. This is not the UK's war, and the UK will not be drawn into it. Having said that, he did say that this was a conflict that was escalating through the UK system and was having an effect on this country. And he was outlining measures that the government was going to take to try and mitigate those effects on UK people, Britons. Internationally, he said that the diplomatic efforts that the UK would undertake would be with a view to try and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. That was the best way of restoring normality. He said that his foreign minister, his foreign secretary, Yvette Cooper, was going to be hosting an international summit to try and make that happen. And also that the UK was talking to its military planners to try and work out how militarily the straits could be reopened after, crucially he stressed this, after the fighting has stopped. And then he pivoted onto domestic measures, talking about how fuel prices were going to be coming down in the short term and that wages were going to be going up and that there would be a fund made available for the most vulnerable people in the country to cope with the effects of this conflict.
Right. And his address there coming, Rory, amid these reports that President Donald Trump has said he's seriously considering pulling the US out of NATO. What did the Prime Minister have to say about that?
Well, he started by saying that the UK is and always has been fully committed to NATO, that NATO is the most successful military alliance in history, and that the UK absolutely would not be walking away from it. He went on to say that there has been huge amounts of pressure on himself, of course referring to the barbs that Donald Trump has been throwing his way, saying that he's no Winston Churchill recently. He said that despite the pressure, despite the noise, as he put it, that he would always be working in the national interests. And thirdly, he talked about Europe because he has stressed in this conference, and it's an emerging strain of, an emerging part of his premiership this time, that he is looking towards Europe and perhaps away from the United States. UK foreign policy for generations has been about balancing the UK's position towards America and its position towards Europe. Since Brexit, the emphasis has been looking towards the United States, but no longer. With Donald Trump and this war, things are tilting back towards Europe for the United Kingdom.
Rory, thank you very much for that. That's Rory Challands live for us in London.